Hey there friends, welcome to another Legally Armed America video. I'm of course Paul Glasgow. This may be one of my last videos on a Matthew Liversberger issue with the Cybertruck explosion for a little while until additional information comes out, simply because as of today not a lot of info has come out. Some things have happened obviously to spark some interest in this story over the last few days, but nevertheless it's kind of at a trickle now. But there were some things that I left out of my video yesterday because I thought it was really important that you guys understood how I arrived at the conclusion that a Cybertruck could in fact be piloted with a non-attentive driver in it. In other words, a corpse. So that was a big deal for me yesterday to make sure that I put all that information in one video and kept all the other stuff out. There's a lot more to talk about, and I'm going to go over those individual things real quick. First of all, you guys are obviously familiar by now with the Sean Ryan interview with Sam Shoemate. Shoemate got the email from Matthews Liversberger, and that's how a lot of this conversation really started. Now I'm going to go back and say what I said yesterday, that if you're going to show me two different things, and I may get into this tomorrow, who knows, but the Las Vegas Police Department and the investigation out there had writings that they allegedly recovered from Liversberger's phone in the vehicle. And then you have the email that Sam Shoemate got. They don't reference one another. They don't reference the material in one another. In other words, this guy, they're leading you to believe, based on what the Las Vegas investigation has revealed, that somehow or another this was just this guy's way of saying the government is corrupt. No specifics, just I want to shed some light on it. This is for my brothers. No individual specifics. However, the email goes into very good detail, and I'm not saying everything is true in the email. I'm just saying he gets specific. He talks about the drones on the East Coast. He talks about different types of technology that could be associated with that. He talks about Chinese, most likely being what's behind that. Talks about the possibility of World War III. Then he goes into detail about some mass casualty events where he took part in some targeting over in Afghanistan, and that the UN had deemed that this was an act of war crime, rather. Well, a lot of that came out. So to me, it seems like when he got super specific in his email, none of those things were referenced by allegedly the notes that the investigation recovered from the scene. So if I'm going to believe one, I think at this point I'm probably going to believe the email, because the feds and everybody else were involved in the investigation that took place over there. In other words, it hadn't had a chance to get tainted yet. Speaking of getting tainted, I want to debunk real quick something that came out on X. I think it was Jack Poso. I don't know who the guy is, but the guy's got gazillions of followers, so apparently he's somebody. But nevertheless, I pulled up his X account, or I was tagged in it or something, and somebody made the comment that, hey, did you notice that the email that went to Shoemate and to essentially at some point Sean Ryan had red lines underneath some of the words indicating misspelling, and that doesn't come through when you receive an email, that you have to be editing that email. So they were accusing Sean Ryan and possibly Shoemate of editing the email. And this guy, Jack Poso, again, is apparently somebody super popular, said, oh, good point. Well, I responded that, which I was surprised. Everybody's gotten emails, right? Anytime you reply or forward an email, which this email literally says at the top of it, forwarded message, and you can see the red lines under some of the words. When you click that, and also a good indicator, by the way, also is the double lines that you see vertically in the left-hand margin. That's showing that there are replies or forwarded messages. So anytime you reply or forward in an email, it's going to suddenly make it editable. So anytime you forward an email, in this case, forwarding the email from Liversberger from Shoemate again to Sean Ryan, each time it was forwarded, those red lines would have popped up and allow you to edit it. It doesn't mean that Sean Ryan or Shoemate edited it. This is a silly thing for people to be hanging their hat on. because it is a nothing burger. It simply happens when you forward an email, and that's exactly what happened right here. So that's nothing. We need to let go of that and look at the other stuff that actually has a little bit of smoke there. Now, I do want to point out that Livelsberger did reference, again, the situation in Afghanistan where there was pretty much they were focusing on what was supposed to be a drug manufacturing facility, and they were trying to get rid of it and bomb it. According to him, they killed hundreds or at least 100 civilians in this attack or in this bombing. Again, not realizing or realizing, whichever. I don't know who's culpable in that. But I wanted to at least give a little bit of credibility and legitimacy to what Livelsberger said here, because there is, in fact, according to the United Nations' own website, they do, in fact, report on a situation that happened in May of 2019. The report came out in October, but it's referencing a situation that happened in May of 2019 where this drug-making facility was bombed and that there were casualties. Now, at the time, they were referencing about 30-something casualties, I believe. Now, Livelsberger is saying that there were 100 or hundreds. But my main reason for showing this is to show you that this guy, people are trying to say this guy was crazy and he was making all this up and that he was lying, where there is, in fact, this information out there. I did not pull this from Livelsberger, Sean Ryan, or anybody like that. I went to the UN's own website and I got this information myself. So it does correspond with the timeline and location with what Livelsberger is actually talking about. Now, another thing that Sean Ryan and Shoemate discussed was the fact that there was an issue after Livelsberger was deceased regarding his Signal account. Now, if you guys aren't familiar, Signal is pretty much an encrypted text messaging app. A lot of us use it. Not that I'm some big shot to use it, but sometimes you want some encrypted stuff because we know people are listening and watching a lot of the stuff that we do. So I will send information or receive information from people that we don't want outside people having an issue with or having a chance to look at through Signal. Well, these guys use Signal also. And Livelsberger had reached out to Shoemate apparently at some point outside of the email that he sent him, but he had texted him as well through the Signal app, or at least exchanged the information showing him, hey, this is my contact information. Here is Shoemate explaining to Sean Ryan that the day after this happened, after Livelsberger was already dead, he gets a notification on his phone saying that the emergency number or there's a number associated with your Signal account. In other words, you tie your main cell phone number or whatever you want, whatever cell phone. In my case, it's my cell phone number. You tie that number to your Signal account. That number on Livelsberger account, it changed.
So I looked at, and I want to give context on one of the things. I saw this going around on social media. People were saying that his Signal chat, his safety number changed. I don't know if you saw this on X, but it was all over X. Apparently his safety number on Signal changed. He messaged me on Signal. So I went on there to look myself to see if it changed. And sure enough, it had. On January 1st, after the bombing, after he was dead, his safety number changed. That's all he sent me. He said initial contact, and I gave a thumbs up, and his safety number changed at the bottom.
Look at that.
That's after he's dead. I don't know enough about Signal to know why that would happen. Somebody has to have manipulated that, though, and messed with it. Somebody had to have been in his account after the fact and done something for that to have changed.
So I have no way of explaining that. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. It's almost as if somebody else, if somebody else was changing that, that means one of two things. Either who initially contacted Shoemate was not Livelsberger, and meaning the email is likely not from Livelsberger either, somebody masquerading as him, saying that they're him and they're actually not. That is a possibility. Or somebody had his contact information, and after he was killed, they stupidly changed the contact information associated with the Signal account, which is really dumb because there are more than likely other people out there who also have this contact from Livelsberger on that account. So if this is the only person that saw this, this tells me that it wasn't Leibelsberger who made that initial contact anyway. If everybody who's ever been contacted by Matthew Leibelsberger actually got a notification saying that that number was changed, then I have to believe maybe it did in fact come from him. But if Shoemate's the only one that saw this, sounds like this is somebody else masquerading as him. Or Leibelsberger's still alive and he changed it. Now, another thing that I want to point out is in the email, Leibelsberger references General Miller. I think this is really important that we look at this, right? One of the things that could be, and this is if there's some kind of outside interference with this, in other words, if it's not all Leibelsberger and this is not all on the up and up, if there's some kind of three-letter agency involved in this, especially knowing the corruption inside the current FBI and CIA, it would not surprise me having him reference Miller in there if this is not somehow a way to try to discredit or put a black eye on Kash Patel, because Kash Patel was working as the Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller, who is General Miller. That's the General Miller that Leibelsberger references in his email. So if there is some Fed involvement here to try to at least move the needle in one direction or the other, it would not surprise me if somebody is not happy that Kash Patel could in fact be the head of the FBI at some point, because that is who Donald Trump has nominated for that. And this could very much be a way to discredit this whole thing. This has the smell of the FBI written all over it, if you ask me, because trust me, they don't want Kash Patel in there. In fact, I saw a report this morning that came out that people within the FBI are saying that if Donald Trump does try to push forward with having Kash Patel as the FBI director, that many of them will walk away. What does that tell you? It tells you that they are scared of Kash Patel. And this really reeks of the FBI's involvement when I saw that. So that's something to pay attention to. Now, since then, additional video has come out of the Cybertruck. It's a video from right under the canopy where the truck blew up. Now, I want to show you this video in different speeds. First of all, let's look at it here, and you'll notice the cab blowing up. I noticed the explosion in the cab first before anything in the bed. Pay particular attention. Notice how it looked like the cab exploded first. Now, I'm going to slow it down a little bit more. I want you to notice the glass bubble up on the cab, the back seat cab. You'll notice bubble up a little bit right before the explode. There you go. Now, look inside the cab. This has every appearance of somebody sitting upright in the cab right when the explosion takes place. That certainly looks like the silhouette of a figure. Now, if it's to scale or not, I don't know. Guy looks kind of big. You know, it looks like he's really filling out that seat. But that's the first frame where you see an explosion and see some of the fire coming outside under the door on the outside as well. So it looks like there was definitely something under the seat and maybe below the guy's feet. Now, they claim that that's where the gun fell, that's where that Desert Eagle fell. I have some questions. I talked in my video yesterday, this could have been a corpse that drove up because of the self-driving ability in summon mode of the Cybertruck, okay? If that is in fact the case where a corpse drove up, then how is the guy sitting up? Not saying that it's not possible to prop him up or have him sat up or something like that. But my other question has to be at this point, when did he shoot himself? Because if looking at this silhouette is proof that he was in fact alive and in the truck when he ignited or set off his explosives, well, at what point did he actually shoot the gun? When did he shoot the Desert Eagle into his upper or into his mouth, as they claim? Because he's surely sitting up really well when the first frame hits, and then whenever the rest of the cab gets engulfed, you still kind of see his silhouette inside there. So to me, that video right there just raises more questions. I feel like you should have seen a muzzle flash or some movement of the head at that point. It looks like he's just sitting perfectly upright. That's what it looks like to me. So I feel like something's not making sense right here. Again, was he able to, as soon as that explosion took place, which looked like it was right directly under him and all around him, was he still able to have that Desert Eagle under his chin and do what he needed to do at that point? That seems really odd to me. I mean, the timing of that, the math ain't mathing at this point. Now, finally, I wanted to show you guys some of the things that I talk about a lot. This is, again, I talk about how the media is always misleading, lying, and they're trying to develop a narrative. And when their narrative isn't sticking, they will run from it, and they will run to another narrative. One of the narratives that they have run with for at least 4 years now is that white supremacy is the number one danger in the United States, according to Joe Biden and, of course, the FBI and all these other clowns out there who are trying to demonize straight white Christian men. And that's not just my opinion. That is an absolute fact. That's what they have done. They have done their best to demonize that. Two things happened almost at the same time, a few hours apart, I believe about 5 hours apart maybe. The New Orleans terror attack and the Cybertruck exploding in front of Trump International. Same day, few hours apart. I took trends from Google Trends to get a general idea of the interest of the media and people online. And I want you to see this. The media drives this a lot with what they push. And then, of course, people follow. In other words, Google is going to suggest things and push it up into suggestions and to have it in the trending areas on their website where a lot of people go to see what's trending. They can push things up and manipulate that data to make things trend that maybe aren't trending. And then they start to trend because you pushed it over the line and made people think this is something you need to see. Remember, a lot of people don't do like you and I and go look for what they want to look for. They go to some of these places and ask them, what do I need to be looking at? Because they're either too stupid or too lazy to find what they need to look at and read and investigate on their own. Google was comparing Matthew Leibelsberger and Shamsu Din Jabbar, the two people involved in these two instances that happened on New Year's Day. Look at the trending lines. The red trending line is Jabbar and the blue trending line is Leibelsberger. As you can see, and this makes sense to me, when it started, there was very little interest in Leibelsberger. Again, Leibelsberger did happen a few hours later, so I expected it to start trending a little bit after Jabbar's instance. But Jabbar's instance goes up all the way. Now, if you see that 100 off to the left, that just means the top that anything peaked at any given time. That's not necessarily indicating a number. That's just saying that when you see 100, that was 100% of the trending at that moment when it hit its highest peak. So that was the highest that happened on January 1st. Looks like it was a little bit later on in the morning or the afternoon, whenever that took place. You notice the blue line for Leibelsberger is flat and then it bumps up a little bit. But then it started trending casually but constantly and consistently upwards while Jabbar trended downward. Now, this is a 7-day picture that I looked at right here. So I narrowed my search down to a 4-day window from January 1st, the day that both of these instances happened, and of course today. And as you can see, it's pretty dramatic. You start out with Jabbar being extremely high and extremely popular with the media and with the general public. And again, 14 by now were killed by Jabbar, and nobody was killed by Leibelsberger. So to me, the Jabbar instance in New Orleans and on Bourbon Street should be much more popular and trend much more than Leibelsberger, just simply based on the casualty and the fear that Americans might have simply because this was a terrorist event and Leibelsberger's was not. You'll notice Leibelsberger's began to trend pretty strong on January 2nd. It actually peaked on January 2nd at its highest. At that point when it peaked, it's actually higher in interest and trending than Jabbar. And Jabbar at that point bottomed out. And as of today, you can see that Leibelsberger is a good bit higher than Jabbar. Jabbar is actually about to die out completely. Now, to be fair, Leibelsberger probably picked up a lot of steam a couple days ago because of the Sean Ryan interview. So I understand that too, and I'm just trying to be fair here. But that doesn't account for why the Jabbar instance in New Orleans is getting stomped out. The only real explanation for that to me is this did not fit the narrative of the media. So they are not reporting on the story. They're basically getting away from it. They're not interested anymore. And my question to you is, and I know the answer to this, but why? We've got two suspects here, Jabbar, and then we've got Livelsberger. They come from two very different backgrounds. I know they both went into the Army and all that, but again, their backgrounds are very different. The type of people they are very different. Their ideologies appear to be very different. I don't see any kind of radicalization or any kind of extreme Islam associated with Livelsberger. Is that why the Livelsberger issue is still trending along and that the Jabbar one is dying out because the media doesn't want you talking about radical Islam, and they would rather you talk about possibly a white Christian male? Just throwing it out there because there's a reason why these trends are separating and why they cross paths at some point. Because to me, again, the bigger story still should be the terrorist attack in New Orleans and the weaknesses that it exposed and all the people affected by that. Again, we still have 30-something people who were also injured by that. So there were a lot of lives directly touched by that. In Livelsberger's case, there were some people injured right outside the Trump International Hotel. Nobody was killed. Nobody was seriously injured.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's over.